Recently, I had the pleasure to play a new project under Electronic Arts Assistance called A Way Out. It is a story about two guys who go through tough situations and establish fragile friendship along their journey. A comrade of mine, TSG, invited me to play this game, and I can only express my gratitude for such an experience. But it's not only for A Way Out that brought some thoughts about making this video. Not long time ago, I had an opportunity to play Hitman Absolution once again, and in two of its missions I stumbled upon characters which worked as Easter eggs in this game. These characters come from one of the projects by IO Interactive. Their names are... Kane! And...
Lynch. Lynch!
What the fuck?
And that's today's topic of our discussion.
I remember my dad's eyes as kind. Yesterday I met him for the first time in years. He's changed. These men say they can stop my father. But I've seen what he and that medicated psychopath are capable of.
Get them all!
I just hope they kill him.
Kane Lynch games are very strange games. Both in general have mixed reviews, which is somewhat reasonable rating, but they also have their own small fanbase which, understanding the game's flaws, have more than a good reception of it and who appreciate initial goals of developers. And one of the most dedicated fan and lover of this franchise, surprisingly, are the developers. Kane Lynch Dead Man was released in 2007 by IO Interactive. The game tells a story about an ex-mercenary Adam Kane Marcus and his watchdog James Seth Lynch. The former is about to be executed after hearing his final verdict and has already finished writing his death letter to his daughter, when something happens.
Mr. Kane, wake up. Mr. Kane.
What?
I need you to cover your head.
What did you say?
Just cover your head now!
Kane gets rescued by his former crime personnel, only to be presented to the Seven, a mercenary group which Kane was a part of sometime in the past. They claim that Kane stole something very important to them, and left the group to die. They want Kane to bring it back in the exchange of lives of his wife and daughter. The Seven puts an overseer to Kane, a guy named Lynch.
Name's Lynch.
And what's the phone for?
I'll be reporting back to them every morning and night.
Great. Fucking watchdog.
From there on, a story of two ruthless killers starts, making their fragile friendship turn into one as hard as nails under very specific circumstances. Whenever we talk about game mechanics, especially those which are core to the game, for me it's very important to understand how the game actually works. This topic is especially uneasy for shooters, as each IP offers very different approaches to shooting mechanics. Resident Evil 4 is not The Last of Us, and Gears of War is not Max Payne. Some shooting mechanics amongst different games can benefit from being intentionally bad, or a better word for it, let's say specific. In a shooter game, a player is required to eliminate an obstacle in order to get to the next objective. For the developer, it is important to consider making this process satisfying enough so that the player has a will to continue his journey. It can be done either through different tools, which will widen players' experience, or with the different types of restrictions and other components. In Resident Evil 4, for example, the player is not able to move while aiming a weapon at an enemy. Objectively, this might look as a technical disadvantage, especially if we look at it from nowadays' perspective. But it turns out that such limitations only benefit the experience. It adds to the horror and survival aspect of the game. The player adapts to these constraints and works around them in order to achieve the goal. Kane Lynch is generally viewed as a bad or mediocre shooter at best, and I can agree with this statement to some degree. You generally go forward, you shoot a bunch of enemies using different guns, Your health depletes and regenerates, and sometimes when it gets worse, you can fall unconscious and only an adrenaline shot made by your friend can revive you. In this regard, the game offers also couch co-op, which actually adds to overall experience. In the end, when I came back to the game in 2018, I felt pretty disappointed. The recoil of every gun felt horrendous. It's hard to get used to cover system, which is objectively weak, and sometimes it's hard to understand whether you got your bullets into your targets, since enemies do not have proper reaction to being shot at. For those statements, it's easy to make the final expression about fundamental mechanic of the game, which I almost did. But even if the shooter mechanics are not satisfying that much, I still do try to analyze how these mechanics function. How can these flawed mechanics benefit the overall experience? The game is very strict on level design, meaning it relies on realistic locations and building structures. It is quite difficult to find convenient covers here, which is one of the things IO can be praised for. The skirmishes which appear in the game primarily happen in condensed environment, thus adding a significant amount of recoil balances the game. And one of the most credible parameters of evaluating the quality and cohesiveness of shooting is raising the difficulty setting up. By doing so, it's easier to evaluate what actually changes in gameplay aspects. Does level design suffer? And does game become unplayable, and so on. I gave it a chance, tweaked some things in the options menu, played around some missions here and there, and then raised difficulty setting up. By the end of the evening I was casually playing through the last mission without having any awful moments. Once you get a grip of what to expect from guns and enemy movements, you can get used to it with no additional challenge. I don't want to justify weak shooting mechanics in Deadman, but I think at least a couple of words in regards of where I'm coming from might be useful. Kane Lynch fell a victim to being an early PS3 game. The engine and mechanics were almost identically implemented from PS2 Blood Money, but it just didn't work out very well on a newer PS3 system, so the intentions of the developers didn't quite blossom in full potential. By the end of the day, it's quite fair to say that shooting in Kane Lynch is flawed, but it's bearable. But I also tend to think that such a complex product as game is better to be viewed as a whole experience, and Kane Lynch is one of these examples. It's a flawed experience, but as a whole it's better than the sum of its parts. Kane Lynch elevates above other games of its genre by the perception to its characters and locations. One of the key elements which developers were considering upon creating the game was crafting specific urban environment for the characters to operate in. And how would characters appear there? What would be the reason for them to act there? And although the engine and most of the technical aspects were taken directly from Hitman Blood Money and tweaked into being a shooter game, it still has classic IO Interactive love of creating realistic and unique locations. Almost every urban skirmish in the game has a note of something exciting and original, starting from bank robbery and its consequences, Tokyo nightclub full of dancing people, to office rooftop, ending with an absolute warfare during rush hour. A couple of missions takes place in Central America, but they are mostly viewed as an uninspired typical jungle levels, which I can agree with. It is not a secret that developers were taking inspiration from fantastic action thriller Heat 1995. Many scenes from this film were retranslated into the game. Take this one for example.
We gotta move! No! This way, let's go.
Kane Lynch in its entirety looks like a very well-directed action film. It is not only for composition of the scenes, dialogues and overall conclusion of the story, but also for additional artworks which worked as a marketing material of the game. The music in Deadman is composed by Jesper Kyd, who has already established himself as a formidable composer for Hitman franchise. His music adds to dismal and disheartening mood of the game. And the second aspect of creating exciting journey was developing chemistry between those characters, whose backstories and charisma are very different between each other. And one of the most important elements of this chemistry was presenting those characters which would act according to their traits and background. You play as an ex-mercenary Kane, whose appearance clearly shows that he's been through tough times. From the first second he gets freed, he knows exactly what he's going to do and how he's going to establish his team. His past life is shown beautifully through visual design as well. He has a scar going over his face and his posture leaves much to be desired. Kane is voiced by Brian Bloom, who you probably know as a voice of BJ Blazkowicz. Genuine anger and frustration of Kane is really intensified by his fantastic voice acting.
What happened up there?
Shit, I just tried to stop her.
Is she dead?
I don't know.
Holy shit!
Guess so. I was aiming for her leg.
Ah, fuck! You fucking idiot! I can't believe you! What the fuck is the matter with you?
Lynch, on the other hand, is a different story. He first makes a deal with the Seven for his survival and for the promise that at some point in time he will take a position in their organization, only to be used as a pawn in the end. Lynch probably became a calling card and the most memorable aspect of the game. His visual design was inspired once again by a character from the film Hit, but I think it shows better in Kane Lynch too. From the very first dialogues, Lynch can be seen as a psychopath, which he is. He takes pills every now and then, and it is hinted that he had probably killed his wife without even remembering it. Unlike Kane, Lynch doesn't have any understanding between what's good and bad. His actions are so atrocious that even Kane gets shocked when he sees them.
Lynch!
What are you?
Stop!
Fucking
What are you doing?
What? Where the fuck have you been?
Stop killing hostages!
I'm not!
Snap out of it, Lynch!
Snap out of it? What the fuck is that supposed to mean?
But why did you kill the hostages?
Why? What do you mean? They were waking up. I wouldn't stay still. I just tried to stop them.
Don't fucking talk to me. You just get your shit together, you hear me?
But at least we got away.
Nobody gets away with what you just did.
Throughout the game, these two will go through different situations which will turn their relation from mutual hate to a very bizarre sort of friendship. The game shows this through little dialogues which are crafted in a very simplistic manner, slowly presenting traits of both of them. But nonetheless, they are very on point and sound very realistic, and somehow they also turn to be awkwardly funny sometimes.
12 hours on a fucking plane, my neck is killing me.
Stop bitching. We still got a long night ahead of us.
Bitching? I'm not bitching. I just hate being ignored. I have to give you that. You got some balls.
What?
Dealing with Redomoto, hanging with his daughter and all. Did you bang her?
Fuck you. We all make mistakes, and so what?
Nothing.
Then just back off. I'm a little fucking edgy, alright?
Kane, can't we just kill him? I mean, we know where the brothers are.
What do I have to do to make you shut up?
All right. Just keep your shit together.
Oh, fuck! Oh, fuck! Oh, fuck! My ears are bleeding! I can't take any more of this shit! Just get on your feet! We're moving in now!
The game makes an impression that Kane pursues a noble goal, saving his daughter and his wife who are being held by the Seven on the brink of death. Saving someone dear to you is a very respectful and valiant deed, especially if we consider this act in context of literature or any other media. But in fact, in order to achieve this goal, Kane can easily step over any moral barriers, if not the same ones. For example, him and Lynch visit Tokyo, a nightclub which is managed by a daughter of an infamous Japanese crime lord. That's what Kane does in order to get a needed briefcase which will ensure his daughter's safety.
I'm surprised to see you. Did my security let you in?
I let myself in.
Does my father know you're here?
I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
So, what made you come crawling back?
Yoko, I need your help here.
And why would I help you? You wouldn't.
That's enough.
Whoa, she's all limp. I didn't even hit her that hard.
It just makes our job easier.
What's this shit?
Just business, Lynch. Her father has the briefcase.
For Christ's sake. You just got your own daughter kidnapped.
And that's what he says to Yoko's father later.
Redomoto, I was hoping to see you in person.
Mr. Kane.
have the patience for your blackmail.
You don't have a choice. You know I'll kill her.
But if we took the
I
time...
have to say that I was surprisingly impressed by the developers who took an absolutely different angle at presenting protagonists to the player. Of course, I do not support women abuse or any kind of abuse honestly, but in our day and age, it's absolutely unlikely to see something even remotely similar regarding character development, especially if we take the last couple of years. And I do respect that developers were trying to create a story which would show natural human violence without any sort of glorification of it. The game never delivers a winning state because each step characters take is treacherous and horrid. Every next step is a step towards more violence, deaths around them, and the hopelessness of the situation. This is one of the reasons why the game didn't get quite good reception from the audience apart from technical issues. The game doesn't want to present you conscientious vigilantes who stumble upon difficulties along their way. Violence which is presented in the game is not justified by heroic goals, because characters tend to do same things as people who are opposed to them. It is true that Kane is restrained by these awful conditions he appeared in, but the plot doesn't deliver convenient situations which would force protagonists to act violently. These people won't be trying to find peaceful ways to solve their problems, because probably they don't even consider thinking about them. From the beginning, you have to admit, whether you like it or not, that Kane Lynch are egocentric scumbags out there. These are the lives they had been living, and there is no other way a person with a past like theirs would act and think differently. Despite the fact that Kane can step over any moral barriers, he still has his own understanding of what's good and bad. In this persuasion of his own goals, he egoistically can forget about men around him because he simply doesn't care. Throughout the game, Lynch will address to Kane numerous times about his actions, that he is a selfish, relentless prick. Through Lynch and these few phrases, Kane's character is slowly revealed to the player, reinforcing the fact that Kane doesn't even remotely care about people around him. These constant jumps between characters' habits, the way they exchange mutual insults, highlighting shortcomings of each other, make chemistry between them so real and natural.
You're getting them all killed, you know that.
I don't give a shit. If the men die, they fucking die. I just want to see my daughter again.
I should be on that list too.
The fuck you should. You don't want revenge. You just want to stay alive.
You self-centered shit.
Surprisingly, these awful traits make Kane a good leader. Throughout the game, Kane will address to the list of dead men, people who were disowned by the Seven. He will find these criminals and they later will be under his command. This element will also work as a game mechanic later in the game, but it's focused on simple interactions and commands such as attack, stay here, go there. They are too a bunch of broken people who follow their leader to at least find some hopeful brighter future. And these plentiful amount of details elevate Kane Lynch above other games in general. Most of the environments, apart from a couple of jungle levels, offer exciting shootouts without preset covers and convenient level design. Shooting, being held back by technical implementation, still gives you a solid reason to go forward because of the protagonists, and music composed by Jesper Kyd reinforces the feeling of being dragged into a thriller. IO Interactive stood true to the characters they've created. Adam Kane Marcus and James Seth Lynch are unlikable protagonists in a bad way, and their characters correspond with their actions. The game leaves it up to you to make your own opinion about them. This sense of honesty for the characters and respect for the audience flows from the first drag of the cigarette up to the last bullet in enemy's gun. Now, Kane Lynch 2 is more than something special.
Lynch?
With all the global hate this game received, I think a major part of what game delivers was overlooked and hasn't been even mentioned and described. From the consumer's point of view, the game doesn't deliver enough content to be worth it. I can totally understand people who purchased this game for full price back in 2010 only to finish it in 4 hours or less. The price has never been a parameter with which I make an opinion about games, whether to like them or not. It has never been a part of this equation. But I know that for some people it plays a huge role, so I don't judge them for hating the game. I just want to say that I always try to understand what developers were trying to present and what the game actually delivers. For this video, I don't want to judge this side of Kane Lynch 2, because as an overall product, I think it's one of the most unique games I've ever played. I was hesitating for a long time to try it out, because the footage I've seen didn't hook me up enough. But then I gave it a chance.
Lynch! I'll fucking kill you!
Kane Lynch 2 Dog Days is a very different game to what Dead Man was trying to be. Grey buildings and cold atmosphere of the first game is replaced by colorful, full of neon signs life of overpopulated and unfriendly Shanghai. This time around, player is offered to play as Lynch, who is about to meet Kane once again. Lynch has settled in Shanghai, now he lives somewhat calm life and even has found himself a woman to live with. He meets Kane in order to help him, as he thought, with an easy arms deal which would happen in the next couple of days. He informs Kane that he needs to finish one small business thing of his. Kane, who barely had any spare time after landing in Shanghai, agrees to join Lynch. Of course, it turns out bad for them, as in pursuit of the needed guy, they accidentally kill daughter of some local mafia boss. The two are immediately thrown into the dirty world of Shanghai, which will turn their lives in a matter of seconds.
Okay, you done? Now come on, let's talk. Hey, relax. Jesus. What just happened? Did he just... The fuck just happened? You just shot his girl, Kane. The fuck I did! Yeah, let's get your luggage. Shit. I gotta think of some story to tell you later.
Dog Days took into account issues which Dead Man had, at least in gameplay department. The gunplay was given much more focus now, shooting became more cohesive and responsive, players now can switch shoulders at any given moment, and using cover became reliable now. The game also runs at 60 frames per second, which is a good addition to overall experience. The combat in comparison with the first game became even more condensed, bringing firefights into corridors, rooms, at a distance between two tables, or even a narrow wall. The movement and controls are now decent, but there's nothing extremely special about them. The game has bullet markers which seemed off to me and reminded me of modern online shooters, but I think it's for the fact that it would be hard to estimate whether you got your bullets into the enemy. I don't think it's the best solution they've come up with, and something could have been done better. In addition to overall speed and intensity of the firefights, the game presents a couple of new tools such as shooting from the prone position upon getting too much damage, or being shot while running. It gives you this last chance of survival and an opportunity to find a piece of cover to heal yourself. The guns have phenomenal amount of bullet spread now for intentional purposes, because Kane Lynch 2 is all about the presentation. Whenever you start a gunfight, it gives you an impression of what Street War should look and sound like. Every skirmish feels like the last, since it puts the player in extremely condensed and harsh situations. Every bullet is deafening, especially in close environments. The ambient music strikes right into the gut, sucking the player deep into the chaotic and sinful world of low-life Shanghai. You don't play as professionals mercenaries anymore, who use custom guns and make headshots every 2 seconds. You play as two drunken bums, Lynch and Kane, who are trying to survive on the dirty streets of Shanghai. And they fight same kinds of people, some thugs who barely had a chance to put their pants on before starting shooting at you. In addition to this dirty urban aesthetics, the whole game delivers special style of amateur video shooting. It gives you an impression that Kane and Lynch are followed by a cameraman who has an old VHS camera. It's like you're watching some old YouTube video, and this style is also reinforced by special loading icons and HUD elements on the player's screen. The movement is given shaky cam effect, which makes a lot of people sick, including myself. This one detail, I think they actually went too far with it. I switched it off in the options menu and I haven't lost anything in terms of immersion. Far from it, upon switching it off I was able to admire surroundings much more, if you can call it admiring. Everything is filled with washed out colors, camera gets interferences when you look at light sources, watery bloodstains fill your screen whenever you get shot, audio has damage effects every time the volume raises too high, and the picture gets censored whenever someone's brains get blown.
This way! Watch out!
And while other films in terms of direction offer a shaky cam and extremely fast editing, Dog Days offers a long, uncut take in every mission to make you feel being an actual participant of the street war. This is Kane Lynch 2. It's a carousel of events about two bums who are desperately trying to survive in the narrow streets of Shanghai. There's nothing charming about these two from the second you make an input on your controller, and there's nothing charming about their surroundings. The game is replete with fantastic environmental details of routine city life. The story will punch protagonists through the various urban locations of Chinese megapolis, through the parking lots and construction sites, through the narrow streets of the uptown and the halls of its buildings, down to black street sewing production sites, abandoned train depots, airport premises, and other locations. Blood, sweat, and tears will follow protagonists through the whole game. These fantastically realized locations of Shanghai are one of many reasons why this game feels so incredibly unique and disgustingly grounded. It is a game where the only possible cover is a wrecked car in the middle of the highway, or a garbage bin in the corridor of the city mall. It is a game where you are suggested to survive as two naked idiots who've been cut almost to death. A story where the only option for the characters is to run from themselves in order to find a peaceful moment to at least have a meal somewhere.
Oh shit! What?
It's a 4-hour chase full of non-stop gore, violence, cussing, and black humor.
Yeah. You might need the lads as well. Well, I don't fucking care if your mum's got fucking head cancer. Well, you just get here.
Okay, we're gonna be on a crowded street, we gotta act cool. Think you can handle that? Yeah, asshole.
The player always acts in the moment, you are constantly attached to what's happening on the screen, and just like the characters, the player doesn't have any moment to take a breath. And when the game does take a break for a couple of minutes, it only intensifies how inextricable the situation for both Kane and Lynch is. At these moments, it no longer surprises you that Lynch is wearing a hoodie with Australian flag on it, and glasses which he probably bought for $2 in the nearest shop. It no longer surprises you seeing Kane wearing classic jacket with dirty training shirts. Dog Days might be just a shooter mechanics-wise, but it drags you in with its fantastic art design, style, and grounded experience. This grounded experience starts even before you actually start playing the game. From the second you press the start button, you can get an impression that this game might be something very different to what you've encountered most of the times. There are different styles of menus in the game, but all of them share extremely immersive audio and visual design. Watching these short looping cutscenes play out, you can immediately assume in what kinds of situations characters appear before meeting each other. Whether it's a cameraman looking at the highway through the car window and listening to local radio, most likely Kane who's going to visit Lynch. Or camera focusing through Lynch's apartment and watching planes land in a nearby airport. Or it's the same apartment in which player is situated, where he can hear thugs knocking at the door just to cut your head off.
我追的强强，我枪迷，我不是怒。
There is one specific scene in the middle of the game which reminded me of the great film Ghost in the Shell, 1995. This film has a famous sequence where the protagonists are chasing criminal in one of the districts in Hong Kong. It gets to a point where the scene moves from city jungles to a more open space only to have a brief moment of enjoying the city buildings.
Just straight ahead. I don't think it saw us.
I find this moment quite amusing. However, of course, as any project, it has its own fly in the ointment. Despite the fact how rapid the game flows and how the whole premise behind the chasing story design works, I still do think that several concepts were scrapped sometime during development, since a couple of scenes which were present in marketing material didn't get its release in the final product. One of the announcement trailers showed Kane fighting against some people, and where is Kane? Who is he running from? Why does it look like he's in some American suburbs? The game never shows these sorts of scenes, but maybe I'm overthinking and it was just a trailer which anticipates their meeting in Shanghai. And also the game might get you annoyed since there's basically nothing more than simply going forward and shooting enemies in the face and making protagonists run for their lives. But since the game lasts for about only 4 hours, it's generally not a big problem. I was happy to learn that the game doesn't spawn infinite amount of enemies into the areas until you move forward. It gives you an opportunity to actually plan your way ahead on repeated playthroughs. Maybe except for one moment when you were suggested to blow up the entire cafe. In my humble opinion, any shooter game has to give you at least bare minimum of freedom in terms of positioning, and I'm glad Kane Lynch 2 delivers this option. Playing Dog Days in one go is like watching an action-packed thriller, which Dog Days actually is. But it's all subjective, up to each individual of course, whether you like the premise and gritty mood of the game, whether it can actually hook you up. Kane Lynch 2 is a good example of taking a naturalistic approach in gaming design. I don't normally like to apply overused definitions to different types of media, but saying that Dog Days falls into a noir genre category will be quite reasonable. Nowadays, there is a big risk of claiming every extraordinary and non-mainstream project to be noir or made by author's vision, which generally can put it on a fictional pedestal of being hidden gem which nobody understood and other praises. What Kane Lynch 2 follows undeniably, its naturalistic or hyper-realistic, even trash vision at presenting story and its characters around.
It's fucked. I hate it.
Whether it's Shanghai, which is shown in all possible horrific ways. Whether it's Lynch, whose appearance cannot be called pleasant at any circumstance. Or Kane, whose appearance is nothing but pitiful. Dog Days has an outstanding level of self-awareness. It reinforces this sort of honesty to the characters once again, and shows in full possible color palette how these kinds of people live by. Thundering screams and gun sounds in closed environments, fantastic and disturbing visuals of the Chinese city of Shanghai, and the continuation of the story about two criminals who are trying to get on with their lives once and for all are the reasons why Kane Lynch 2 is a different and such a unique experience. IO Interactive made an outstanding piece of art, which, judging by how the game was received, probably would never be repeated in some other form or style. It is subjective, of course, whether to like or not this style and aesthetics. It is a different genre which is not popular even in cinematography, not only in gaming. But for all the reasons such as you play as unlikable bums, the picture is disgusting, I don't like it, it's just a shooter and nothing more, which people seem to criticize the game with, I truly enjoy the journey of these unforgettable assholes. It's an ugly world of ugly people that I totally love about Kane Lynch 2. This video is called Dead Man's Legacy for a couple of reasons. First of all, after replaying Kane Lynch and its sequel, I got an impression that other studios have taken some sort of inspiration and implemented some ideas from IO's game to their projects. With all the love to Rockstar and their games, there are some observations which caught my attention the most.
I knew if I didn't get to the girls soon, they'd be leaving this place. The doors had been chained shut. I didn't need my Portuguese for Beginners phrase book to work out what was going on.
What are you doing? Need to stock up.
They were still alive, at least.
Just get out of here.
This crew was starting to look a lot like friends of the gate crashers at last week's party. These guys had some real issues with the Broncos.
Out back, there's an alley.
Let's go.
They were back to finish the job. I figured it was time to start doing it.
Come on. Let's get going.
Yeah.
Shit! Down here!
These are just my speculations and observations, but I won't be surprised if Rockstar was actually inspired by IO's interactive projects. There's nothing criminal in taking bits from different types of games, films, etc. It's always amusing to find that different studios expand on different concepts and ideas of other people. And as we can see, Max Payne 3 turned out to be a fantastic game. In regards to character traits, Trevor from GTA 5 always reminded me of Lynch with his all-out insanity and social craziness. And it has been a topic of discussion several times in the community. It might also look like a coincidence if we take crazy sociopath stencil as an argument, but it's up to each one's opinion. In the beginning of the video, I dared to say that one of the biggest fans of Kane Lynch franchise are the developers, and they actually do show this love through their main IP, Hitman franchise, always through little details, as a memento. In 2017, IO Interactive has broken up with their publisher, Square Enix, to become an independent studio. During negotiations, they had a risk of losing several licenses. Thankfully, it turned out well for them as they have maintained Hitman and Freedom Fighters, losing the rights on Mini Ninjas and Kane Lynch. And I guess we can all assume that creating another Kane Lynch game in hands other than IO Interactive's is highly unlikely.
Look at us. We screwed it all up.
Following the modern trends, taking opportunities of creating something that niche and specific is followed by a huge amount of risks. But I still have a warm feeling inside me knowing that IO Interactive still remembers and always reminds us that they too love Kane Lynch. In absolution,
What the fuck? What are you looking for, stranger? Trouble? Son of a bitch! Pussy biker!
and their love is also shown in the newest Hitman, either through special Easter eggs,
Hi, it's me. Look,
Man, I
know
love
what
Kane
to do.
and Lynch. That
Lost
shit is real.
Yeah? Well, I don't know anything about video games, to be honest.
They wanted me in a movie, you know. That would have been wicked.
Patronize me. Yeah, I
or with some specific character designs. Or even musical compositions. Either way, the cruel story about two unforgettable criminals has its own page in history. This call-based experience will be something which will either remain in your mind as a unique exposition of violence in media, or as something which you would want to forget as soon as possible. I can only speak for myself, but Kane Lynch left a solid feeling of experiencing something extremely different, thrilling, and memorable. So by the end of editing, I realized that this video is more than 30 minutes long, and in my emotional talk videos I don't normally try to make analysis or something like this, but rather showcase things I like and rather recommend. So I'm very curious, what do you think of it? Should it be a longer format, or should I try to make videos shorter and more focused on basic exposition? I have tons of ideas to share with you, so I would like to hear what you think. And thank you for watching.